Hello and welcome to the Benefit of the Doud Podcast. I am your host, Adam Doud, and joining me is co-host Clifton Thomas. Cliff, what's up, buddy?
Oh, what's going on?
What's going on? You got some new digs
I
going on
do.
there, which is exciting.
Yep.
I'm really looking forward to learning all about where you are hanging your hat these days, your podcasting hat, as it were. And spoiler alert, patrons, there's going to be a video showing you what's going on too. So patreon.com/benefit of a doubt. Let's get that plug out of the way right away.
Exactamundo. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
I'll be giving you a
So
little tour. And it won't take very long because this is not a very large space. But
I think it's going to be amazing. But anyway, so today, speaking of first, this is kind of a first for the channel. We're actually going to do a comparison video, and that's because a couple of devices have come into my possession, and we are going to be taking a look at the Google Pixel Fold
ooh.
versus the Samsung Galaxy Fold 5. And
Ah.
this is going to be an epic showdown, people. I
Yes,
can't even
sir.
tell you how amazing it is going to be. But you know what we need in order to share that amazing? You know what I just realized? Your name says Adam Dowd. You should probably change that. While I bring up Skippy the review cam. Hello, Skippy. Skippy. I muted you. What the hell? Anyway. I muted. I swear
Uh,
to God, I pushed the button. Anyway.
high production quality, one of the many things we have here.
Yeah. Come for the jokes, stay for the screw ups. All right.
Exactly.
Anyway, so we have both devices here. In fact, you know what I'm going to do real quick, and I should have done this like off air while we were waiting, but I'm just going to go in here and crank up the display times to 10 minutes so that we
That's a
aren't
good idea.
constantly aren't constantly turning the displays on and off. But anyway, so there is the Google Pixel Fold, and here is the Samsung Galaxy Fold 5. Now, this is a bit of I don't want to call it a spoiler necessarily, but the reason that we are doing this is because I have a fairly controversial opinion about these two devices, and I wanted to share it in a sort of structured breakdown way because, like, you know, I wanted to share an opinion like we normally don't share them. Normally we just spout crap and hope that it holds up, but now I think I actually have a reasoned argument for this controversial opinion that I
There's
hold.
always a first time.
There's always a first time, so let's get right to it. My controversial opinion is that the Pixel Fold is better than the Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 5 in almost every way, but you should still buy this phone right here.
I am looking forward to how you're going to explain yourself, sir.
Okay, so we're going to break this down into a few different categories. And the first category that we are going to talk about are the cover screens, and that is what we are looking at right now. So the cover screen, for those of you who are not familiar with foldables, this is the screen that you see all the time when the fold is closed. There's a screen on the inside that folds, hence the term
Wow.
foldables. And so, like, suddenly it's a much larger canvas. But this is the
Got
cover
the
screen.
S Pen case on that Galaxy 5 Fold.
I do. I
Z
do have the
Z
S Pen case, and
Z Fold.
we'll talk about that a little bit too, because that is actually one of my points
Mm.
in favor of the Samsung phone. But anyway, so the cover screen is absolutely wonderful on the Google Pixel Fold. It is a much more pleasing aspect ratio. And now it's normally a little bit wider than I think what you normally see most like candy bar phones being. So like for example, this is the Motorola Think phone. And so it's actually a little bit it's actually not quite the same size. Like it's more squat than a
Right.
normal candy bar phone these days, and the screen is just a little bit wider. It's almost like It's not quite like, you remember that BlackBerry that people kept comparing to a slice of cheese? Uh,
Passport?
was it the Passport? Yeah, okay, I couldn't
Yeah.
remember which one it was. It's not quite that, but it's a wider aspect ratio, and I think once you add that to the thickness of the Pixel Fold, it actually makes this a very pleasing aspect ratio to work with.
I mean,
Um,
I really liked it. It's
go
not
ahead.
exactly the same aspect ratio, but I really enjoyed the Surface Duo, like
Yeah,
proportionally, as compared to other foldables I've used for that same
yeah.
reason. It's a kind of like a passport.
And speaking of the Surface Duo, there is some very strong Surface Duo DNA in this device here. So this is better than the Duo in
Oh,
almost every way.
absolutely.
But there's some strong resemblance here. But anyway, I should mention that this is the second Pixel Fold that I have gotten, because the first Pixel Fold, actually, the inner screen started to fail on it. It never actually fully failed, but I had a line of dead pixels going across the bottom of it. They weren't like dead pixels, they were actually like always on bright pixels. And because of that, while I was waiting for a replacement to be shipped to me, instead of switching to a different phone entirely, I actually just used the Pixel Fold closed the entire time, and I did not care.
Right.
So, and that's a very important thing to point out here. Now, um, on the other hand, the cover screen on the Galaxy Fold 5 and the Fold 4 and the Fold 3 and the Fold 2 and the original Fold is this. Okay, you know what I'm going to say? This ridiculous aspect ratio of being like way too narrow to actually use in any kind of useful way. And actually, if longtime viewers will recall back on my original Fold 2 review that we did a couple years ago, I complained that the outside screen is not big enough to be a phone, and the inside screen is not big enough to be a tablet. That was like one of my key
Hmm.
that was one of my key arguments about, like, why would you buy this phone? And it's good to see that Samsung has really dug in its heels and and decided this is what we are just going
It's
to
already
do.
spent the money on the tooling. They're just gonna keep going with it.
Now, here's the thing: if you are somebody who enjoys using their phone one-handed, this does have benefits to it. Like, you can reach most parts of the screen just with a one-handed grip, whereas with the Fold, it's a little bit harder to make that stretch. So,
More
like,
thumb gymnastics.
if you're a big fan of using your phone one-handed, this is not bad. Also, I will point out that when you open the phone, I think this is a much more useful canvas for, like, this like square orientation rather than this, almost rectangular kind of 6 by 9. It's not 16 by 9, but it's a much wider
Right.
canvas. So, like, it's definitely like, I mean, with this you can navigate around with two thumbs pretty easily. But I mean, with this, you might be stretching to get to the middle, which is why it defaults to a split keyboard. So I mean, like, but when it's closed, my God, this cover screen is glorious, and I just love the heck out of it. Um, so that moves me on to my next point. When you open the phone and you're using it this way, there's kind of a strange thing that happens, actually, a little bit. Um, with both the Google and the Samsung, you can set it to mirror your cover screen.
Right.
So, like, these icons here are the exact same ones that I have on my cover screen. Similarly, these icons here. Now, the only reason I have widgets here is because this phone looks absolutely ridiculous when you just have a narrow column of columns coming down the one side and, like, nothing over here. Over here, I added in a couple of widgets, and actually, you can see there's a couple of other little apps that show up over there.
Right.
And so, like, I think I kind of prefer this cover screen, this inside screen, just because I think it's a little bit more. I don't know, useful, like with a productive thing. Like when you have more of a landscape kind of focus here, it still kind of lends itself to being a kind of a one app at a time kind of device, rather than with like with a more squarish theme here. You can more easily do like side by side apps. I think, I don't
See,
know. That's just kind
I
of
would
how I
feel
feel about
like, sorry, this is just having not
it.
used either of these
Yeah, right.
for any amount of time, but just looking at the screen on the Pixel Fold, I would feel like the more apps would scale with in
To
the split
this?
screen mode compared to the one on the right.
Oh, I
Because really,
see.
if you're going down the middle on the Samsung, you're again
Yeah,
dealing with those narrow aspect ratios compared to what you have on the
very
Pixel.
true.
But
Very true.
I haven't used it, so I don't know what that's like in practice.
Right, right. And we're actually going to touch on that a little bit later. But anyway, so that's kind of like my second point. Um, the third point is this phone over here has much better cameras than this one here. Now,
Mm,
I need to clarify that by saying that the image quality is not, there's not a huge gulf in between these two phones. What I consider to be a air quotes much better camera is I think it's this guy here, the periscope lens, the 5x zoom that you can get out of here, as opposed to just like the normal 3x that you get out of the Samsung.
right.
It should be mentioned that these three cameras here are the exact same three cameras that came in last year's Samsung Fold 4. Um, the only difference is this phone has the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2
Right.
processor for Galaxy, which has a different ISP, which can, under certain circumstances, make slightly better photos. But
Right. Using
honestly,
Qualcomm's image
right,
coprocessor to, yeah. But the
right,
camera set is the same. I mean, I'm sorry, just as an aside, the Z Fold 5, while it seems like, I mean, a great phone, it's just so iterative and nigh on lazy.
yeah, yeah,
I mean, what else? I mean, I hate to say that because, but they own the market, so I
yeah.
understand why, and
So
maybe
there's
this will
two
change
ways
later
you can
this
look.
year. Right.
There's two ways you can look at it, and I actually touched on this on the Android Faithful podcast. And by the way, to all our new subscribers on the Android Faithful podcast, welcome. Anyway, I touched on this there. There's two different ways that you can look at that. There's my way, and then there's another person who also wrote a review whose headline I kind of respect, and he kind of turned me over to his way of thinking. My headline for this particular review is minimum effort, maximum profit, which I got from an old Anthrax song, which was minimum effort, maximum gain. Anyway, um, Ben Sin also wrote a review for the news side of Forbes, and he called this the final stage of evolution for what Samsung was building up to. And that is a good way to put it. Like, I think there is something to be said for, like, Samsung had a vision of what its foldable wanted to be. It took 5 years to get there, but now it's there.
Gotcha.
So it's, it kind of depends on how you look at it. But um I kind of am leaning more towards Ben's view of it. I personally think, and I've said it on multiple platforms, this is the most boring device that was launched at Samsung Unpacked,
Right.
because it was basically last year's phone, except now it folds flat. So congratulations, I'm glad you figured that out, Samsung, but you could have done a little bit more. Now, I think what's going to be super interesting next year is what is the six going to look like
Right.
compared to the actual meaningful competition that Samsung has in the United States right now.
Ooh, that's a stretch. I guess
Well,
what you could say is meaningful maybe by the end of the year, if OnePlus brings theirs and the Pixel Fold has any sales success.
yeah.
I
Well,
mean, there's a lot of ifs with that
there's
in our market.
regardless, there is now a choice, and
Right.
one
And
that
there
did
was
not
not before.
exist 4 months ago.
Right. For
So
sure.
anyway, and then the final point that I think, and actually one point that I didn't mention, but holding the phone like this with this Geordie LaForge visor back here actually gives it a nice place to like
A
rest
little
your
rest.
fingers
Well, that's
for
what I
holding
liked
it.
about even when
Yeah.
the Pixel 6 came out. I mean, when you and I did the silly pet tricks with hanging it from
Hanging with
things.
Pixel 6. Yep. Yep.
I mean, but truly, with the handling, it does add something to it.
Yeah.
And it
That was
doesn't
fun.
make it flop compared to, when it's aligned on one side with, whether it's the Fold or even just
Right.
a lot of their candy bar phones. I will say, just as an aside, I am glad that there are different flavors of foldable phones.
Oh
Like,
yeah,
if
absolutely.
everything was the same,
Absolutely.
I mean, then you're basically just judging on software and, I guess, camera performance. I mean, it's nice to have
Right.
these different aspect ratios and
Right.
different strokes for different folks. But I'm with you though. I really do, and I prefer the look and feel of the Fold as an idea. Like I said,
Yeah.
Surface Duo, yeah, or like the Oppo Find N series.
And then the last point that I want to bring up is that the Pixel Fold has a better stock software experience.
Hmm.
You get the Pixel launcher with the app tray and all that, and I like the different widgets that Google can do. Google's got the one like the next up, what do they call it? The next up widget or something, where it shows you like your next calendar appointment or
Oh,
the weather where you happen to be. It's like it's contextual basically. Whereas Samsung still has this side launcher thing, which
yeah.
I hate because when you go down to the end here, I'm on YouTube Studio and I can't wrap around, so now I got to go. Oh, and then I got to go all the way back to the Amazon app that I was actually looking for.
It
It's
is that
just
much
it's
worse.
so annoying.
It's that
It's
much
so
worse too
annoying.
on that narrow screen because you can only fit so many apps.
It really is. It really is. Now, I mean, the launcher thing is kind of a minor point, but it needed to be mentioned.
Right.
Now, let's talk about why I think if you have $1,800 to drop, this is the better way to go. The first one is hardware support. As I mentioned, and that's a multi-level thing. As I
Right.
mentioned, and this doesn't come into the conversation at all because I'm sure it was just a fluke thing, but this phone has already failed once, and I've only had it for a couple of months now. Now I'm not 100% confident that Samsung's going to do a much better job because I will admit that I do not treat these phones with kid gloves. But at the same time, I think Samsung has been in this for 5 years. It has a better idea as to like how to build these screens. Okay, not to mention this is a first generation product for Google, and a lot of first generation products for Google are now in the Google graveyard. So will there be a Pixel Fold 2? We don't know.
Very true.
Um, so and like I'm not necessarily saying that that's necessarily a bad thing that there won't be a Pixel Fold 2 because then all the Pixel Fold owners can be like, I've got the latest and greatest from Google. But still, like it's hard to know how long the support is going to last for this. Not to mention when you do have a screen failure, how good is Google support going to be? Because Google support doesn't necessarily have the best reputation. Not that Samsung does, but Samsung has resources in place to replace this in situ if you need to. Like you can go into a store and get a new,
Right.
screen
Exactly.
replaced and whatnot. So that's the first reason why you should buy this. The
Yeah, their
second
retail
reason
presence is a huge thing relative to Pixel hardware for sure.
The second reason is stylus support. Now,
Hmm.
the Google Pixel Fold has zero stylus support. So you cannot use a stylus on this phone. So we're just going to go ahead and move this off to the side. Um, Samsung also very nicely refined the case that it has for including the stylus. This is actually a very nice thing. It just snaps right into there, and then like
Oh.
this little switch flips down and kind of pushes it out a little bit. The
Hmm.
downside is this case and the S Pen are $100.
Jeez.
So that's a lot for a phone case. But like when you're doing, stupid little games like I like to do, Having a stylus really does make a difference.
It does.
And you can like pick that, and my big sausage fingers maybe won't necessarily get it. Anyway, I dig having a stylus. I dig the fact that Samsung makes a very slim case that comes with a stylus in it, and that is very easy to get to. So, stylus support is kind of a big deal for me. Maybe you don't care. That's fair.
Is that magnetic? Where is it, or is it just does it just snap in?
No, it just kind of wedges in there.
Huh.
So like
Oh, I
it's
see. With the button press. Gotcha. Okay.
yeah. So when you push that down, it kind of here. Well, I'll show you. When you push the switch down, it kind of forces
Pops
it out,
there. Yeah.
and then you could just take it out the rest of the way, and then but it's it just sticks it there with like friction, I guess, or whatever you want to call that. Anyway, so the third thing is multi-gesture support, which is kind of cool. What I mean by that is Samsung has actually built in like a two-handed interface here. Let me open up, and I kind of failed at this demo with the Android faithful. So let me see if I can be a little bit better prepared
Redemption time.
this time around. So I've got like a document open here, and then if I go over to like, I'm just gonna do like, I'm gonna look for. I gotta go to a web page with like a graphic that I can. Okay, so I'm just gonna grab like this graphic here. It's somebody's profile picture. I don't know what it is, but you can see I drag this across here. Now I can actually use my other finger while I'm doing that to move over to that document, and then I can drop that on there, and there's the image. You know, so it's really interesting that you can use like this two finger gesture system because or not gestures, I guess, but you can actually use two fingers doing independent things on the screen because no other phone does that. Like at least not that I'm aware.
Not that I've seen. No.
So it's really cool, and it actually makes a whole lot of sense on a canvas like this,
Right.
where you can actually have like two fingers doing kind of a thing, you know. And then
That's definitely that's 5 years of evolution on the software
that's
side
5
and
years of
experience.
evolution.
Right.
Exactly that. Exactly that. Then there's also one other thing that I also kind of showed off on the Android Faithful, which actually wasn't part of my outline here, but it kind of makes me think about it, is the Samsung ecosystem. If you're using other Samsung hardware like a Tab S9 Ultra or even a Tab S8 Ultra from like last year, or like you have a Samsung laptop or something like that, you can use this multi-control. It's the same thing as what Apple does with like the where you can use like the same mouse and keyboard on multiple
Right.
devices. So like if you have a Tab S9 Ultra, which I don't have mine nearby, but you can connect your tablet and your phone, and then you can use that same mouse and keyboard on both devices, just moving back and forth. It's kind of neat. And it also speaks to the ecosystem that Samsung is building with all of its devices, which is really nice.
It is, and they're really the only. I mean, you could argue Chromebooks and Android phones to some extent have that, but yeah,
Right.
I mean, on the Android side of things, I really feel like Samsung's the only one that offers anything close to what Apple's doing.
Right.
Even though
Exactly.
sometimes it feels a little convoluted and not as smooth since Apple is making everything. But
Right. Right. Exactly. And then finally, there's app support. And what I mean by app support is a couple of different things. First of all, we talked about the multi-gesture support, which is something that Samsung built in. And again, that's like you said, that's the fifth year of evolution.
right.
That's where that came from. But I just want to show you another thing. There's a game that I play, and I think I might have mentioned this on this podcast before, but it's called Cody Cross. It's like a little crossword puzzle kind of game. Okay, stay with me here. Okay, so like
Sure.
you can see on the inside screen here, it's basically just a normal app size. You can double tap over here and bring it over here. If you want to use your right hand, you can double tap it over here, move it over there to your left hand. let me show you
But either
how
way, it's
Samsung.
letter bars basically.
Let me show you how Samsung does it, or how it works on a Samsung phone. First of all, you can
Uh,
see the intro screen is edge to edge, top to bottom. But
Now, is Samsung
when you,
forcing that, or is that app optimized for the
I am
Samsung device?
fairly sure it's an app optimized for it,
Okay.
because you look at the layout here. So like the whole idea of Cody Cross is it gives you like a hint, sleeping in a tent. So you say camping. Okay, that's the right word. Okay, and then it like seeds letters down below,
Is
and you
this
can
the
do
game
that.
that you were trying to play on the cover screen of the Motorola Edge?
Yes, yes, same
Not
phone,
Edge, but Moto
the Razor Plus.
Razor Plus. Yeah.
Now, watch what happens when you go into a puzzle for on the Samsung phone. You get an ad. No, I'm just kidding. Give me a second.
Optimization.
Optimization. You can
Oh
see like
yeah.
this is an entire
Wow.
canvas that was designed specifically for
Mm-hmm.
this aspect ratio. And the reason it was designed for this aspect ratio, I'm assuming, I haven't actually spoken with the developers of Cody Cross, but it's because this phone has been around for 4 years.
Right.
So like the developers, Fanity, I believe they're called, got the idea, hey, you know what? This phone's probably going to be sticking around for a while. Let's optimize our app for it. Meanwhile, over here, we're just going to throw it up there and see what happens.
Right.
Like here, I can see like all the different questions. I can only see like three different rows here. And it's just like this keyboard is more spread out. It's not compacted. It's just an overall better experience. And
Mm-hmm.
that speaks to Samsung's longevity. This has nothing, as far as I know, this has nothing to do with Samsung. I don't know that Samsung hunted down the Cody Cross people and said, look, we need you. I don't think that happened. It's very possible it did, but if I had to guess, I
Which
don't think
also,
that's
I
what
mean,
happened.
shows the benefits of Samsung sticking with the same form
The
factor.
same form factor, yeah,
Right.
absolutely. And so there's no denying that this form factor is more convenient for some people, and it's also been around for so long that developers are used to it now. So like, I mean, that's kind of my argument there. That's like, this is a great phone. I love this phone. I love almost everything about it more than I love this phone. But those are some very compelling reasons why you should go and spend that
Sure.
$1,800, especially since they're the same price. Those are some compelling arguments as to why you should put your money into this phone as opposed to the one that I already just pushed off to the side. So, spoiler alert, if you're looking for a recommendation, this is going to be it for those reasons. Like, I think. Go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah.
No. Finish your thought, and then I have sort of um, I say a little turn
No. That's
while
fine.
still
So,
sticking on the same subject. Mm-hmm.
so broad strokes. I think that the reasons to buy this phone are more compelling than the
Sure.
reasons to buy this phone. But when you get down to nitty gritty type stuff, which is where a lot of the user experience lives,
Mm-hmm.
this one is going to impress you more than this one. This one will give you like a really good experience, but this one's going to be like, oh yeah, okay. This it's like the difference of having like a good server at a restaurant, or a server that like brings you an extra slice of cake because it's your birthday. You know? And it's like, you want to tip this one much
Right.
more than this one.
I also feel like well, no, I'll take that back. I was gonna say I feel like if you buy the Pixel Fold this year, and then I'm not sure what if they do come up with a second Pixel Fold, a Pixel Fold two for lack of a better name. Anyway, uh,
Right.
I think there will be less FOMO, but if you buy the Sammy versus and then the Fold 6 comes out, that the changes have been so iterative, you won't necessarily feel like you need to upgrade if you're that kind of person. Versus I think there's going to be quite a bit of difference between the Pixel Fold and the Pixel Fold 2 in terms of the evolution. um,
Okay. Yeah.
so that's one way to look at it. But this actually brings me to my question for you.
Okay.
Would you recommend that people buy a folding phone and that, of this size and of this expense at all. Like, do you feel like it's worth it monetarily and experience wise?
Man. There is some stuff about foldables that are really nice that I'm going to
Right.
I've used an insane number of foldables this year, especially
You
compared to
have.
like years previous. But like there are some parts of the foldable experience that I genuinely will miss when I go back to using like a more candy bar form factor. We talk about it with like Motorola, like when you miss that chop for the flashlight.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I'm going to miss being able to set up my phone as its own tripod, when I'm taking like product photography, stuff like that. I'm going to miss having the ability to just have a gigantic freaking map um, of
Yeah, that would be
of
great.
like yeah, like the geocaches that are around my house. This is not around my house, so don't try to like figure out where this is. But like like having just this much of a canvas just to play with when it comes to like, just mapping in general, let alone geocaching, that's really nice.
Sure.
So like, yeah, is it nice to use a foldable? Sometimes, yes.
Right.
Um, I think the experience is still a little. I think you have to be willing to deal with some stuff if you're going to deal with a foldable. Like, oh, I can only open the phone this far before it switches over to the inner screen, and now I have to use it over here. Um, and so like in general, I think you have to be, first of all, you have to have a lot of extra money, because let's not forget this and this are both double the cost
Right.
of like the OnePlus 11, which in and of itself is a great phone. Um, so if you want to double the cost, that's a very big value proposition.
In some
And
cases, triple the cost of the OnePlus 11, depending on if you get it on sale or not.
right, and
Right.
like the other thing that the gorilla in the room, the 800-pound gorilla in the room here, is that this year I have tested 5 different foldable phones. 2 of them have failed
Yeah, exactly.
with the
Yeah.
inner screen. So like, yeah, that's probably mostly down to luck. It happens. I've had other candy bar phones that have failed in one way
Sure.
or another. Like
Statistically,
back.
though, it seems like your foldables have definitely been percentage wise on it a much higher fail rate than your
Oh yeah.
average. Yeah, and yeah,
Oh yeah.
that's again where I think you go back, and I think we might have already mentioned this, but where again having Samsung as the for support is probably
Yes.
a much better experience um, in a couple of different ways. So it
Right.
really does feel like the Fold is more for your early adopters or for people who are Pixel fans. But the average
Remember,
person,
you can't just say the Fold because they're both called Fold.
I know that
But
Pixel Fold. Let me
yeah.
for Pixel fans, right?
Yeah.
Eh, so yeah, I totally get your point here with recommending the Sammy because it
I
just
think
makes more sense for more people.
it really just does, and it makes more sense for like more non-geeks, normals, as I like to call them.
Right.
It just, and so like, there is a lot to love about this phone, and I don't think you will be unhappy if you buy either of these phones. Like, I need to make that very clear. These are both very good phones, for very distinct different reasons. But um, and honestly, if to be perfectly honest, if you made me buy one, I would probably get the Pixel, just because I vastly prefer using it. But for most people, I think the Samsung is the better and the safer choice.
Yeah, I agree. That
So
would be my. I mean,
yeah,
golly, I probably would go with the Pixel Fold too. I have to say, and part of it for me, honestly, is just the superior cameras.
yeah,
Because
yeah,
for me, like I'm not a big multitasker. I'm not someone who does the two apps side by side kind of thing
Yeah.
Even on like a, I mean, maybe on a larger screen laptop, that's about the only time I really, or if I have two monitors. But on a mobile device, it's just it's maybe I'm just not that productive a person. What does that
That
say
could be.
about me?
That could be. Nothing good. But no.
Yeah,
And like since you mentioned the cameras, and I mentioned using it as its own tripod, it's really nice to be able to set the Pixel down and hit that astrophotography mode, and
yeah,
just like sit back, because
very
you
cool.
can't do that with the normal candy bar phone. You have to like put it into a tripod or prop it up or something like that. Whereas with this, you can just do that, and you have to kind of like manipulate it a little bit, because you're going to be like, I think I got to push the button somewhere around in here. But you can do that, so which is very nice. So yeah, like overall, I just think that is why the Samsung is probably the wiser choice for most people. And so that is the way I feel about that. That is my that that is my this thus concludes my presentation. No, but anyway, so yeah, that's just kind of where we are. So I think it's fair to say that we're going to go ahead and close out this particular video. I want to thank everybody for watching. If you've made it this far, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button down at the bottom there. Hit that little bell so you can find out when new reviews are coming out, because they will be coming out with a pretty good
Pretty
frequency,
good clip, yeah.
actually. Now that we're back from hiatus, we're going to start, making these things again, which is great. I'm very excited about it. We have another foldable comparison coming up in the not too distant future, so stick around for that. But for now, if you're listening to this, or if you're listening to the podcast on a podcast player, go ahead and leave a review on that podcast player,
There you
because
go.
that helps the audio portion of the podcast get out there. And like, subscribe, comment down below. I think we're still looking for a name for our caliper. So if you want to suggest a name for our caliper, go ahead. If you're coming here from the Android Faithful podcast, say hi down in the comments. We'd love to hear from you as well. And for now, I'm going to say thanks for watching and for giving us the benefit of the Doud.